At 13:47 hours, two Chinese J-20 stealth fighters broke from formation over the South China Sea, vectoring directly toward what their radar showed as empty airspace. What Beijing's most advanced pilots did not realize was they had just locked onto America's $2.2 billion B-21 Raider, and it had been watching them for the past 20 minutes. Here is what the Chinese pilots were seeing on their instruments: two faint thermal signatures at bearing 095, altitude 40,000 feet, moving at approximately Mach 0.85. Their Type 1475 radar systems were painting what looked like birds, maybe large migratory cranes. The J-20's passive sensors were not picking up any electronic emissions, no radar pings, nothing that screamed American bomber. But 200 miles to the southeast, Lieutenant Colonel Sarah Chen was watching this entire dance unfold from her command post aboard the USS Gerald Ford. The Navy AN/SPY-6 radar array was tracking not just the two J-20 fighters, but also the B-21 that Beijing's fighters were unknowingly stalking. More importantly, Chen could see what the Chinese could not: three additional heat signatures maintaining perfect formation spacing 15 miles behind the Raider. The B-21's radar cross-section is classified, but defense analysts estimate it is roughly the size of a large insect on most enemy detection systems. China's J-20 pilots had trained extensively against F-22 and F-35 fighters during simulated encounters, but the Raider operates in a completely different stealth paradigm. Where previous American aircraft minimize radar reflection, the B-21 actively manipulates electromagnetic signatures to appear as atmospheric phenomena. At 13:49 hours, the lead J-20 pilot made his critical error. He activated his fire-control radar for a target lock. That 3-second radar ping told every American asset within 400 miles exactly where China's most advanced stealth fighters were operating. But Beijing had no idea they had just triggered something much larger than a routine intercept mission. Within 90 seconds of that radar ping, the entire strategic calculus in the South China Sea shifted. The Chinese pilots had painted themselves for every American submarine, destroyer, and electronic warfare platform within a 400-mile radius. More critically, they had activated what Pentagon insiders call the Constellation Protocol. What Beijing's military planners never anticipated was that the B-21 was not operating alone. Those three additional signatures Lieutenant Colonel Chen was tracking turned out to be two B-21s flying in stealth formation, and a third that technically does not exist yet, a prototype B-21 variant equipped with the Air Force's new Collaborative Combat Aircraft System. In plain English, that single bomber was controlling 6 autonomous drone wingmen, each carrying enough firepower to level a small city. At 13:51 hours, the lead J-20 pilot, call sign Dragon 7, reported back to Hainan Island Command. Contact established with unknown aircraft. Request permission to close distance for visual identification. What Dragon 7's flight leader could not tell his commanders was that his aircraft's stealth coating had been compromised during their aggressive maneuver. The J-20's radar-absorbing material degrades rapidly under high G turns, and those sharp banking movements to intercept the unknown contact had just lit up his fighter like a Christmas tree on American sensors. The real genius of this entire encounter was not the stealth technology, it was the strategic trap. United States Pacific Command had been deliberately baiting Chinese fighters into exactly this type of aggressive intercept for months, collecting invaluable intelligence on J-20 capabilities while exposing critical weaknesses in Beijing's detection systems. But Dragon 7's next radio transmission would reveal something that changed everything about America's assumptions regarding Chinese military doctrine. Dragon 7's transmission crackled through encrypted channels. Command: unknown aircraft is not evading. Repeat, target is maintaining course and speed despite our approach. What Beijing's flight controllers could not hear in that radio call was the subtle stress markers that United States intelligence algorithms had been trained to detect. Dragon 7's voice pattern analysis revealed elevated heart rate, shortened breath intervals, and micro-hesitations indicating cognitive overload. Classic symptoms of a pilot encountering technology beyond his training parameters. But here is where China's military doctrine exposed a fatal flaw. Instead of ordering immediate withdrawal when faced with an unknown stealth contact, Hainan Island Command doubled down. At 13:53 hours, they scrambled 4 additional J-16 fighters and activated their Type 052D destroyer's phased array radar system. Beijing was committing more assets to identify what they assumed was a single American bomber penetrating their airspace. The Pentagon's trap trap was working perfectly. Each new Chinese unit that went active was feeding real-time intelligence back to United States Cyber Command, mapping Beijing's entire integrated air defense network in the South China Sea. The J-16 fighters' data link communications, the destroyers' radar frequencies, even the timing delays between pilot transmissions and ground control responses, all of it was being harvested and analyzed in real time. At 13:55 hours, Dragon 7 closed to within 12 miles of the B-21 and finally achieved visual contact. His next transmission revealed intelligence that no Pentagon wargame had predicted. He reported, "Command, I have eyes on target. The American bomber is displaying Chinese military insignia." The Raider was not just invisible to radar, it was actively impersonating a People's Liberation Army aircraft. But that deception was about to trigger a response that would bring both superpowers dangerously close to actual combat. The false flag operation lasted exactly 47 seconds before U.S. Space Force satellites detected something that made every Pentagon analyst's blood run cold. At 13:56 hours, thermal imaging from orbit revealed that Dragon 7 had not been fooled by the B-21's visual deception. He had been buying time. While his wingman maintained visual contact with the Raider, Dragon 7 had been covertly transmitting burst communications on frequencies that American intelligence did not even know China possessed. Those were not standard People's Liberation Army radio protocols. The signal patterns matched theoretical quantum entanglement communication systems that Pentagon scientists assumed were still decades away from battlefield deployment. In 47 seconds, Dragon 7 had potentially transmitted the exact position, heading, and radar signature of America's most classified bomber directly to Beijing, through a communication channel that was essentially impossible to intercept or jam. Lieutenant Colonel Chen watched her tactical display light up with new contacts as the implications cascaded through Pacific Command's decision matrix. If China had quantum communication capability, then every aspect of U.S. stealth doctrine needed immediate reassessment. The B-21's electromagnetic signature, its flight patterns, and even the formation spacing of its drone wingmen, all of that classified data could now be sitting in Beijing's military databases. At 13:57 hours, the strategic balance shifted again. Dragon 7's quantum burst had triggered automated responses across China's integrated defense network, but it had also activated something else, America's most closely guarded contingency protocol. The Raider's onboard artificial intelligence detected the quantum transmission and autonomously initiated what Air Force doctrine calls Prometheus countermeasures. Within 90 seconds, Beijing would discover that their technological breakthrough had just walked directly into America's most sophisticated electronic warfare trap. But Dragon 7's final transmission would reveal that China had been expecting this response all along. Dragon 7's final transmission hit U.S. intelligence networks like a digital sledgehammer. Dragon 7 announced that Phoenix Protocol is active and that American assets are exactly where Beijing predicted they would be. Lieutenant Colonel Chen's tactical display suddenly showed the terrifying reality. This entire encounter had not been a Chinese mistake. It had been a carefully orchestrated intelligence operation, and the B-21 Raider had just flown directly into Beijing's trap. The quantum burst transmission was not sending data to China, it was activating prepositioned assets that American satellites had completely missed. At 13:58 hours, passive sonar operators aboard 3 U.S. submarines simultaneously detected cavitation signatures. Those signatures indicated multiple Chinese Type 095 attack submarines had been lying dormant on the seafloor for potentially weeks, positioned at exact coordinates that would maximize damage to American naval assets. But here is the intelligence failure that kept Pentagon analysts awake for months afterward. NSA intercepts later revealed that Beijing had been testing quantum battlefield networks for 18 months, using American training exercises as live fire testing grounds. Every B-21 mission over the South China Sea, every stealth bomber penetration that the U.S. military thought was demonstrating American technological superiority, had actually been feeding China's AI systems real-time performance data on America's most classified aircraft. At 13:59 hours, Dragon 7 broke radio silence one final time and reported, "Recommend immediate withdrawal. Target has activated unknown defensive systems." His radar warning receiver was screaming with lock-on alerts from weapon systems that did not match any known American signatures. The Prometheus countermeasures on the B-21 were not just electronic warfare. They were something that made China's most experienced stealth pilots sound genuinely terrified. What Dragon 7 detected in those final seconds would force both superpowers to completely rewrite their understanding of modern aerial combat. Subscribe for more military intel like this. It gets insane.